My name is Vivian and I am 32 years old. Growing up, it didn't take long for me to realize that in my uncle's family, love and attention were not given equally. From the moment I moved in with them after my parents' tragic car accident, it was like I was constantly reminded that I was the outsider looking in. My Aunt Felicia and Uncle Harrison had already built their perfect world around their daughter Catalina. She was their golden child, the one with the dazzling smile, the sweet laugh, the perfect little princess everyone adored. Me? I was just the orphan niece they took in out of obligation. I remember my high school graduation day vividly. I had worked 3 part-time jobs to save for college, dreaming of studying biochemistry and making my parents proud, wherever they were. When the family celebration began, I watched as Felicia presented gifts with theatrical flair. For Catalina, who had barely graduated with C's, there was a brand new MacBook Pro and a designer purse worth over $3,000. For your influencer career, darling. Felicia squealed, clapping her perfectly manicured hands. You're going to be such a star. Harrison beamed with pride, already pulling out his phone to document the moment for Catalina's social media. Then Felicia turned to me with that practiced smile I knew too well. And for you, Vivian, she said, handing me a small, clearly used textbook. Organic Chemistry, 3rd edition. I thought it would be practical, she said. The book was dog-eared, highlighted by someone else's hand, probably picked up at a garage sale for $5. My heart sank like a stone in my chest, but I forced a grateful smile. Thank you, I whispered, clutching the worn book against my chest. It's perfect, I said. Nobody noticed the way my excitement crumbled into humiliation. This pattern became my reality for years. Whenever Catalina posted a new selfie or gained 1,000 followers, Felicia would throw mini celebrations, buy her new clothes, and share her posts with everyone she knew. When I earned my PhD in biochemistry at 28, becoming the youngest researcher at Patterson Pharmaceuticals, I got a distracted, "That's nice, dear," before the conversation immediately shifted to Catalina's latest brand partnership. At work, I buried myself in research and late-night lab sessions, craving the validation I could never find at home. Every published paper, every patent, every breakthrough I achieved went unnoticed in their house, while Catalina's Instagram posts were printed and framed on the main wall. I learned early on that in their eyes, love was conditional, and I didn't meet the conditions. Catalina was everything they valued, photogenic, popular, and profitable through her online presence. I was the awkward, bookish shadow they tolerated, always too serious, too ambitious, too different. Still, I never gave up. Deep inside, a fire burned, a stubborn, unyielding belief that one day I would prove my worth. Not for their approval, not for their love, but for myself and the memory of the parents who would have been proud. And that day would come sooner than anyone expected. The day I left for graduate school was the first real taste of freedom I ever had. I still remember standing in the doorway, my bags packed and my heart pounding, as Harrison gave me a distracted nod and Felicia told me, "Don't get too caught up in all that science stuff. You'll need to find a husband soon." I ignored them. Graduate school was a revelation. In classrooms and laboratories, I was no longer the outsider. My passion for pharmaceutical research and drug development wasn't strange. It was celebrated. For the first time, my dedication opened doors rather than slammed them shut. Research grants, fellowship opportunities, conference invitations, I chased every chance and grabbed it with both hands. While other students spent weekends socializing, I spent mine in the lab running experiments and analyzing data. My hard work paid off when I earned my PhD with honors, landing a position at Patterson Pharmaceuticals before I even defended my dissertation. The salary wasn't extravagant, but it was enough to start building a life I had always dreamed of, a life where I didn't have to apologize for my ambitions. I lived modestly, saving every bonus, every raise, every extra dollar. I didn't splurge on designer clothes, expensive cars, or luxury vacations like Catalina constantly did. I had one goal burning in my mind: complete independence, a home of my own. At the age of 30, after years of sacrifice and relentless discipline, I finally achieved it. I bought a beautiful 3-bedroom townhouse for $650,000 in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. It wasn't a mansion, but it was perfect: updated kitchen with granite countertops, a cozy study lined with bookshelves, and a small garden in the back where I could finally breathe. Every corner of that townhouse represented a piece of me, my late-night studying, my research breakthroughs, my determination to honor my parents' memory. When I told my aunt and uncle about my purchase, I hoped, perhaps foolishly, for a moment of genuine pride. But true to form, they brushed it off completely. Felicia barely looked up from her phone, more interested in commenting on Catalina's latest sponsored post about skincare. Harrison gave me a dismissive shrug and muttered, "Seems like a lot of space for someone who works all the time. Don't you think?" Their words cut deep, but not enough to dim my fierce satisfaction. For once, I wasn't seeking their validation. I had built this life for myself, brick by brick, and nothing, I thought, could take it away from me. I was wrong. Catalina's engagement party had been the talk of the family for months. Felicia had gone into full event planning mode, obsessing over every little detail such as the floral arrangements, the catering, the photographer, the venue decorations. Harrison stood proudly at her side, ready to present their perfect daughter and her success to their social circle. I attended, of course. Despite everything, I still believed in showing up for family milestones, even if I often felt like an outsider looking in. The engagement venue was stunning, an upscale restaurant's private dining room decked out in blush pink and gold, crystal chandeliers casting warm light overhead, and a string quartet playing softly in the corner. The guests buzzed with excitement, laughing, mingling, sipping champagne and posting photos to their social media accounts. Everyone seemed wrapped up in the magic of the evening and Catalina's picture-perfect moment. As I stood near the gift table, observing the celebrations, I couldn't help but feel that familiar hollow ache in my chest. There was no doubt that this day was about Catalina, about her fairy tale engagement, about the perfect image Felicia and Harrison had always cultivated. Marcus, Catalina's fiancé, seemed genuinely kind. He had warm eyes and thoughtful manners, and he treated everyone with respect, even me. In another life, I might have even enjoyed having him as part of the family. I had gifted Catalina a delicate silver bracelet with a small charm engraved with her initials. It wasn't expensive by their standards, but it was thoughtful, a piece of my heart offered quietly. No one acknowledged it, of course. It was just me, after all. The evening was in full swing. Guests were still arriving, chatting, enjoying the elaborate spread of appetizers. Catalina glided around the room, glowing with happiness, her designer dress catching the light as she posed for endless photos. I stayed close to the edges of the crowd, smiling when required, blending into the background as I always had. But there was something different tonight, a tension crackling under the surface, a calculating gleam in Felicia's eyes whenever she looked my way. I didn't know it yet, but the evening that was meant to be a celebration would soon twist into something else entirely, something cruel, something that would change everything. I was sipping a glass of sparkling water near the entrance when Felicia waved me over with that practiced smile I knew meant trouble. Harrison stood beside her, his arms crossed, looking unusually serious. "Vivian, darling, we need to discuss something important," Felicia said, her tone dripping with false sweetness that always made my skin crawl. I followed them a few steps away from the main crowd, toward a quieter corner near the windows where the music faded to a whisper. Marcus was talking with his parents nearby, completely unaware of the storm brewing. Felicia leaned in first, her voice low but urgent. "This is such a special night for Catalina. Everything has been absolutely perfect, don't you think?" she asked. I nodded cautiously, my instinct screaming that something was wrong. Harrison cleared his throat, exchanging a meaningful look with Felicia before speaking. "There's something Felicia and I have been discussing, something important for Catalina's future," he said. I straightened, my muscles tensing. "You have that lovely townhouse now," Felicia said, her eyes gleaming not with warmth but with cold calculation. "And you're unmarried, buried in your work. You don't really need all that space for one person." The words hit me like ice water, their meaning crystal clear but impossible to believe. Harrison stepped forward, his smile patronizing and cruel. "We think it would be the perfect engagement gift if you transferred the property to Catalina and Marcus," he said. For a moment, the entire room seemed to freeze around me. The clink of champagne glasses, the gentle laughter of guests, it all became muffled white noise. "You're actually serious?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Of course we are, Felicia said, as if she were discussing the weather. Blood is thicker than water, Vivian. Catalina is our real daughter, and she deserves a proper start in life, she continued. My hands trembled at my sides as the full weight of their words sank in. I thought of the years of grinding work, of 4 a.m. lab sessions, of eating instant noodles for months to save every penny, all to buy that townhouse with my own money, my own sweat, my own determination. My home. My sanctuary. My proof that I had made something of myself despite them. I shook my head slowly, feeling something dangerous and powerful stirring in my chest. No, I said, my voice growing stronger. I'm not giving my house to anyone, I said. Felicia's mask slipped completely. Her eyes flashed with pure venom, disappointment morphing into rage. Harrison's face darkened like a storm cloud. Before I could step back, before I could even process what was happening, Harrison raised his voice loud enough for half the party to hear, and everything changed. Harrison's voice exploded across the room so suddenly that at first I couldn't process what was happening. In one calculated, vicious motion, he raised his arm and pointed directly at me, his face twisted with rage. This ungrateful little parasite thinks she's too good for family. He shouted, his voice carrying across the entire party. After everything we've done for her by taking her in when no one else would, feeding her, housing her, she won't even help her own cousin. He said. A white-hot flash of humiliation crashed over me like a tidal wave. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned toward us. I felt exposed, raw, like my skin had been peeled away in front of everyone. Gasps rippled through the elegant crowd. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. Someone's phone clattered to the floor. I could see the shock and pity on people's faces, and it felt worse than any physical blow. Felicia rushed forward, not to comfort me, but to pile on the attack. Selfish, spoiled brat, she hissed, her voice dripping with years of hidden resentment. We raised you like our own daughter, and this is how you repay us? By embarrassing us in front of everyone, she said. I staggered backward, my vision blurring with tears I refused to shed. Around me, guests pulled out their phones. Some started recording, others whispered behind their hands, all of them feeding on the drama. Catalina stood frozen in her designer dress, her mouth open in shock, her perfect Instagram moment completely ruined. Marcus, from across the room, was already moving, pushing through the stunned crowd toward me. Before he could reach me, a voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. That's enough. Shouted a man I recognized as Jasper, a journalist who'd been quietly observing from the corner. He was already recording everything on his phone, his reporter instincts fully engaged. This is abuse, and I'm documenting every word. Felicia lunged toward me again, her words full of poison, but Marcus stepped between us just in time, shielding me with his solid presence. Stay away from her, he said, his usual gentle demeanor replaced with something protective and fierce. What you're doing is disgusting, he said. Tears of shame and rage rolled down my cheeks onto the marble floor. The perfect engagement party was dissolving into a public nightmare. Within minutes, Marcus's parents, the distinguished Blackwood family, approached Harrison and Felicia with faces like thunder. We've seen enough, Mr. Blackwood announced coldly, his voice carrying the authority of old money and social power. Our son will not be associating with a family that treats their own with such cruelty, he said. Mrs. Blackwood nodded icily, already removing her elegant gloves. The engagement is off. Consider any wedding plans cancelled, she said. The room erupted in whispers and shocked murmurs as the weight of their words sank in. I stood there, trembling and humiliated, but somehow still standing. The world felt like it was spinning around me, but one thing was crystal clear. There was no going back from this moment. The scene outside the restaurant was chaos, flashing phone cameras, murmuring crowds, and the click of heels on pavement as guests hurried away. As Marcus helped me to a quiet corner near the valet stand, I could hear fragments of conversations swirling around me. Did you hear what he said to her? Calling her a parasite. I got it all on video. This is going viral for sure. Unbelievable. At their own daughter's engagement party. Marcus stayed close, his arm protectively around my shoulders as I tried to stop shaking. I could see Jasper nearby, still recording, speaking rapidly into his phone as he documented everything. Another guest, an older woman I recognized from Harrison's business circle, approached us hesitantly. "I recorded it too," she said, her voice filled with disgust. "That was absolutely appalling." "You can have my footage if you need it," she said. Within minutes, several guests came forward, their faces tight with anger and moral outrage. People were already posting clips to social media, the hashtag spreading like wildfire. Meanwhile, Harrison and Felicia stood near the restaurant entrance, both red-faced and defensive. Harrison continued to mutter justifications under his breath, while Felicia tried desperately to salvage the situation with forced smiles. Marcus refused to leave my side, his jaw clenched tight, the fury radiating off him like heat. "This was supposed to be a celebration," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "How could they humiliate you like that? How could they be so cruel?" he said. One of the Blackwood family friends, a distinguished lawyer, approached us gently. "Vivian, what happened here tonight was public humiliation and emotional abuse. If you choose to pursue this legally, you have dozens of witnesses and video evidence." I nodded, still trembling, the shame burning hot in my chest. As we prepared to leave, I caught a glimpse of Catalina standing in the restaurant doorway. Her designer dress was still perfect, but her face was streaked with tears and mascara. Marcus's parents stood nearby, their expressions cold as winter stone. I could see it all unraveling, the perfect engagement, the fairy tale future, all of it crumbling in real time. The moment Marcus helped me into his car, sealing us away from the chaos, I realized this wasn't just the end of an engagement party. It was the beginning of my liberation. As Marcus drove me away from the restaurant, the devastation I left behind continued to unfold. Inside the venue, the once elegant atmosphere had turned toxic, beyond repair. Guests whispered in tight clusters, some gathering their coats quietly, others openly discussing what they'd witnessed. No one was toasting anymore. No one was celebrating. Marcus's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood, stood before Catalina and her shattered family, their faces carved from ice. "This is unconscionable," Mr. Blackwood said, his voice carrying across the now silent room. "We will not allow our son to marry into a family that treats their own with such calculated cruelty," he said. Mrs. Blackwood nodded curtly, her diamond earrings catching the light as she shook her head. "We trusted you with our son's heart," she said, her voice trembling with controlled rage. "We welcomed this engagement because we believed in the love between Marcus and Catalina. But after witnessing this display of pure malice, there will be no wedding. Not now, not ever," she said. Catalina, still in her $1,000 dress, let out a strangled sob. Tears ruined her perfect makeup. "Please," she whispered, reaching out desperately. "Please don't do this." "I had nothing to do with what they said," she said. But Mrs. Blackwood stepped back as if physically repelled. "This is not just about tonight," Mr. Blackwood continued, his voice final as a judge's gavel. "This is about character, about the kind of people you choose to be. We will not expose our family to this toxicity," he said. With that, Marcus's entire family turned and walked away, leaving Catalina standing there, destroyed and abandoned. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his tie loosened, his face grim. He didn't argue with his parents' decision. He didn't defend Catalina or her family. His eyes, when they met hers across the room, held no love. Only disappointment and finality. Slowly, the remaining guests began to leave, some offering awkward apologies, others simply avoiding eye contact. Within an hour, the engagement party that had cost thousands dissolved into nothing. Catalina collapsed into a chair, her designer dress spreading around her like the petals of a dying flower. Harrison and Felicia, stripped of their social standing in a single evening, could only watch helplessly as their carefully constructed world crumbled. The engagement was officially, publicly, devastatingly cancelled. And it all traced back to one simple truth. Their cruelty had finally destroyed the perfect image they had spent years building. My apartment was small but peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos I had left behind. The soft lamplight cast gentle shadows on the walls as I sat on my couch, still processing everything that had happened. My phone buzzed constantly with messages of support, social media notifications, and calls from reporters. I turned it face down, needing silence. The emotional wounds felt deeper than any physical injury could have been. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like the painful end of a chapter I'd never wanted to write. As I sat there, nursing a cup of tea with shaking hands, there was a gentle knock at my door. Marcus stepped inside when I opened it, his face etched with concern. In his hands, he carried a small bouquet of white roses, simple, elegant. "Hey," he said softly, his voice carefully gentle. "How are you holding up?" I managed a weak smile, stepping aside to let him in. "You didn't have to come check on me." "I wanted to," he replied firmly, his eyes never leaving mine. "After what happened tonight, I had to make sure you were okay," he said. He set the flowers on my coffee table and sat across from me, his hands clasped together. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of the evening's events hung heavy between us. "I'm so sorry for what they did to you," Marcus finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "You didn't deserve any of that cruelty." "None of it," he added. Tears threatened at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them back. I was tired of crying over their treatment of me. Marcus leaned forward, his expression serious. "I know a good attorney. Her name's Donovan, and she specializes in cases like this. If you're willing, I think you should consider legal action. Not just for tonight, but for the years of emotional abuse you've endured," he said. For a moment, I hesitated. The thought of going after my uncle and aunt, the people who had raised me, felt overwhelming. But then I remembered Felicia's calculated cruelty, Harrison's public humiliation, the decades of being made to feel worthless in my own family. Something inside me crystallized into determination. "I want to do it," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need to do this," I said. Marcus smiled, his respect for me evident in his eyes. "Good. You deserve justice, Vivian. You deserve so much better than what they gave you." He reached over and squeezed my hand gently, offering silent strength. For the first time in years, I didn't feel completely alone. By the end of that week, Marcus had helped me schedule a meeting with Donovan. Together, we prepared to take the first step toward reclaiming my dignity and my life. Donovan's office was sleek and professional, filled with mahogany bookshelves lined with legal texts and framed diplomas from prestigious law schools. Despite the intimidating atmosphere, her warm smile put me at ease as I signed the paperwork. "This won't be simple," Donovan warned gently, sliding the documents across her glass desk. "But with the evidence we have, the video footage, the witness statements, the social media posts, you have an exceptionally strong case." Marcus sat beside me, his presence steady and reassuring. I looked at the thick folder on Donovan's desk. Inside were sworn affidavits from party guests, screenshots of the viral videos, and most importantly, hours of clear footage showing the public humiliation I'd endured. Every cruel word captured in high definition. "I'm ready," I said, my voice calm but determined. "I want to pursue this fully," I said. Donovan nodded approvingly. "We're filing for intentional infliction of emotional distress, defamation, and intentional interference with inheritance rights. The public nature of their attack will work strongly in our favor. We'll demand both accountability and substantial compensation," she said. Hearing it laid out so professionally made my stomach flutter, but it also ignited something powerful inside me, resolve. Within days, the legal machinery began moving. Court dates were scheduled. Depositions were arranged. Witnesses were contacted. When the case gained media attention, reporters flocked to cover the story of the orphan niece taking on her wealthy relatives. Harrison and Felicia hired expensive lawyers, but their public image was already shattered. I took the witness stand and told my story. The years of emotional neglect, the calculated favoritism, the constant reminders that I wasn't a real family, and finally, the devastating public humiliation at Catalina's engagement party. Donovan presented the videos to the court. The footage showed everything. Harrison's vicious accusations, Felicia's cruel words, my visible distress, and the shocked reactions of the guests. Every second was damning evidence. Witnesses testified without hesitation, describing not only that night's events but also the pattern of emotional abuse they had observed over the years. Harrison and Felicia's lawyers tried to argue it was a family dispute blown out of proportion, that emotions had simply run high. But the evidence was overwhelming. The truth was undeniable. The jury barely needed time to deliberate. The courtroom fell silent as the jury returned, their faces solemn and resolute. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Marcus reached over, his hand gently covering mine. A silent message: whatever happens, you are not alone in this. The foreperson stood, clearing her throat with gravity. We, the jury, find in favor of the plaintiff, Vivian Chan, on all counts. The words rang through the courtroom like a bell of justice, cutting through years of pain and humiliation. Harrison's face went ashen. Felicia gasped audibly, her manicured hand flying to her throat in shock. For once in their lives, they couldn't manipulate the outcome. They couldn't buy their way out or charm their way through. Justice was happening right here, right now. Judge Morrison, a distinguished woman with silver hair and piercing eyes, wasted no time in delivering the verdict. In light of the overwhelming evidence of systematic emotional abuse, she said, her voice ringing with authority. And considering the profound psychological damage inflicted upon the plaintiff over many years, I hereby order the defendants to pay compensatory damages in the amount of $2.3 million. A collective gasp swept through the packed courtroom. Furthermore, the judge continued, punitive damages are awarded in the amount of $1.7 million, and the defendants are ordered to pay all legal fees and court costs. It was more than I had ever dreamed possible. Harrison and Felicia sat frozen, their expensive lawyers whispering urgently in their ears. Their faces showed a mixture of disbelief and fury as the full weight of their financial ruin sank in. As the judge's gavel fell with finality, Harrison turned briefly, his eyes desperately searching mine for any hint of mercy. He found only the steady gaze of someone who had finally found her voice. I watched them gather their things and leave through the courtroom doors, their empire of cruelty finally crumbling around them. As the hearing concluded, a breath I hadn't realized I was holding escaped my chest. It was over. The years of being made to feel less than, the calculated humiliations, the emotional warfare. It had all led to this moment of vindication. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving their treatment. I was completely, utterly free. The warm afternoon sun felt like a blessing on my face as I stepped out of the courthouse. A gentle breeze carried with it the promise of new beginnings I had never dared to imagine. In one hand, I held the court documents, official proof that my worth had been recognized and my pain validated. In the other, I felt the infinite possibilities of my future. Marcus was waiting for me at the bottom of the courthouse steps. He stood there in his charcoal gray suit, his eyes bright with pride and something deeper. Without saying a word, he walked up to me and gently tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "You did it," he said, his voice thick with admiration. "You stood up for yourself and won. You changed everything," he said. "I couldn't have done this without you," I whispered, my voice catching with emotion. Marcus shook his head, his smile tender and knowing. "You were always strong enough, Vivian. You just needed someone to see your worth the way I do," he said. He took a deep breath, and suddenly the busy courthouse steps seemed to fade away. There were reporters and supporters around us, but in that moment, there was only Marcus and me. From his jacket pocket, he pulled out a small navy velvet box. My heart stopped. "I know this timing might seem unconventional," Marcus said, his voice steady but full of feeling. "But I've learned that real life isn't about perfect moments. It's about choosing to build something beautiful with the person you love." He opened the box to reveal an elegant solitaire diamond ring, classic, timeless, exactly what I would have chosen for myself. Right there on the courthouse steps, he dropped to one knee. "Vivian Chen," he said, looking directly into my eyes, "will you marry me?" Tears of joy blurred my vision as every emotion I'd held back came rushing forward, such as love, hope, gratitude, and pure happiness. The pain of my past didn't vanish, but it no longer defined me. I had not only survived their cruelty, I had transformed it into strength. And now I was being offered a love I had never believed I deserved. "Yes," I whispered, then with growing confidence, "yes." The crowd around us burst into applause and cheers. Marcus slipped the ring onto my finger with hands that trembled slightly, and I pulled him up into an embrace that felt like coming home. 6 months later, we had a small, intimate wedding surrounded by people who truly cared about us. No pretense, no performance, no toxic family dynamics. Just authentic love, respect, and joy. After the wedding, Marcus and I moved into my townhouse, our home. The same $650,000 property I had fought so hard to protect now became the foundation of our life together. Every room, every corner, every carefully chosen detail stood as a testament to resilience, determination, and the power of refusing to accept less than you deserve. And for the first time in my entire life, I wasn't just existing or even just living. I was flourishing, completely and beautifully alive.